This is Rick Malone for the San Francisco Symphony. Beethoven was at heart a man of the theater. Even though he only wrote one opera and one ballet, he loved going to the theater, and on several occasions he was inspired to write an overture or some incidental music to a play that he had just seen. One of those overtures even inspired a revival of a play that had been unperformed for nearly 5 years after Beethoven had seen it. Heinrich Joseph von Collin was an official at the Imperial Treasury and a privy councillor in Vienna. He was also a poet and a playwright and a friend of Beethoven's. In fact, Beethoven had such a high opinion of von Collin's writing that he had asked him to help revise the libretto for the opera that became Fidelio, and to collaborate on another operatic project that never happened. Collin's play Coriolan was one of several that he wrote on Roman subjects, and it's based on the same story that Shakespeare had used for his own tragedy Coriolanus. In the original story, the Roman general Caius Marcius runs for consul but is rejected by the people. He later becomes a hero in battle and takes the nickname Coriolanus after the city he helped conquer. But he loses the election for consul and rails against the stupidity of the Roman people. He's labeled a traitor and banished from the city. He joins forces with the enemy general Aufidius to invade Rome, but is convinced to negotiate a peace by his wife and his mother, whom he left behind. The negotiations are a success and peace is achieved, but Marcius is assassinated by his former allies. Shakespeare's story stays pretty close to these details, but in Collin's play, Marcius vacillates and delays, speaks reams of elegant verse but never actually does anything, and dies at last by suicide. But the subject matter of the people asserting their will and standing up to a would-be tyrant was one of Beethoven's favorites. 3 years later, he'd write an overture and incidental music to the play Egmont, which was about the Dutch fight for freedom from Spain. So even though Collin's play had been dropped from the State Theatre's repertory 2 years earlier, it was revived for what seems to have been a single performance in April of 1807. One of Beethoven's biographers speculated that the event was arranged specifically, quote, to bring together the composition and the work for which it was written, end quote. The slashes and silences of the first 14 bars outline Marcius's character, especially as he swings from action to inaction. There is also a softer, unsentimental but urgent melody for Marcius's wife Virgilia and his mother Volumnia. The overture is restless and anguished, underscoring the story to come, and it's full of contrasts between violent gestures and silence, or near silence. For the tragic close, Beethoven returns to an effect he'd used in the funeral march of his Eroica Symphony. The rhythm and melody build to a furious climax, but then disintegrate as the ending fades away. That funeral march is in the same key as the Coriolan Overture, C minor. It was a key that held special meaning for Beethoven, especially at the fiery tempo he sets for this overture. It's the key of his fist shaking at the heavens, the one he used for the opening of his Symphony No. 5. Even though no one has produced Collins' play in years, and Beethoven's Coriolan has become strictly a concert overture, one of the reasons that it's so effective on its own is that it's a remarkably compact and vivid portrait of the play's title character. As a man of the theater, Beethoven understood drama, whether on stage or in the orchestra pit. This is Rick Malone for the San Francisco Symphony.